Hello guys and welcome back. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. It's called Patrol Talk. So every Friday I'm hoping that we're going to produce a Patrol Talk. Now the idea of Patrol Talk is so that we can get together and I can provide you guys with the knowledge and the answers to your questions that I see on the Patrol forums, on the Patrol pages on Facebook, just about every single day. Now, I'm going to need your guys' support on this one. Put your comments and your questions down below so that I have something to answer for you. Now, I've got plenty of ideas and plenty of questions that I've seen that I can answer, and that's what we're going to do. But if you guys have personalised questions and stuff that you want to know about that thing behind me, put them down below so that I can get back to you and give you the answers that you need. So what's the point of this? Well, there's a lot of different answers to comments out there, and not all of them are 100% spot on or good answers that provide good actual content within them, that provide the right things that people should know. So I'm here to provide my experience and my knowledge and my research so that you guys get the right answers to your question. I think that's pretty important because these cars are non-conventional, they're different, and there's so many things out there that you guys should know about them. Whether you already own a Patrol, whether you're looking to buy one, or perhaps you're not sure. So that's the point of this. I want to provide that information to you guys so you guys know, so you can make good informed decisions. So in today's video we're going to discuss, is the Y62 Patrol a good alternative from its previous generations, and does it live up to the Patrol name? So to kick things off, we're going to talk about the main differences between a GU and a Y62. So the differences are pretty obvious. They're completely different looking cars. Obviously they were manufactured in different years, and there is a lot of differences. So I suppose the main difference is the body of the car. So it's obviously a completely redesigned chassis and body design. That's pretty obvious by how it looks. Obviously Nissan needs to stay current and modern, even though why is there wood grain in the car? So obviously they need to do that to keep up with the market, to keep up with people's demands and what people are expecting from a car. So they've obviously changed that. The GU is getting a bit dated, and the engines were decent, but probably a bit lackluster. TB48, it's a good engine, makes decent power, and there's modifications and stuff that you can do to that. And it's quite reliable as well. One of the other differences, whilst we're talking about engines, is the VK56, the V8 5.6 litre that is in the Y62 Patrol. Now that's obviously a petrol V8. It's a modern V8, not a pushrod V8 like you would see in older cars. So the sound isn't quite there for what a V8 should sound like, in my opinion. Although with a good exhaust and a snorkel, they still can sound quite good, especially if you're adding some sort of forced induction like a turbo or a supercharger, which these engines do love. Some other main differences are obviously the suspension's completely different. They've gone away from a live axle and they've now gone to a independent suspension system with the HPMC, which is the hydraulic body motion control, which alleviates sway bars by using a hydraulic shock absorber to control the roll of the vehicle. Now it does a great job at this, and it is a very comfortable car to drive. So I think they have done well in that aspect, although of course a live axle is going to have a bit more strength and longevity over a independent vehicle with CVs. They do have a tendency to break, especially with a big powered V8 like this. Obviously the interior's changed a lot as well, probably for the better. The GUs were getting a bit dated, but they'd been around since I think it's 1999, I think was the earliest GU. Up until 2012 perhaps. So it's been around for a long time and not much really changed. The body did get a facelift just like the Patrol has, the Y62 I should say. So there is a lot of similarities there in the way that Nissan has developed the vehicle over time, but the vehicles themselves completely different. With those main things in mind, does that still live up to the GU's reputation of being the ultimate four-wheel drive and Toyota killer? Well, I would say yes. I reckon it still does, for sure. So let's talk about the engine in the Patrol, the VK56. So I've mentioned it before. I think a good motivator for buying a vehicle should be its pedigree. What has it been designed for? If you take Subarus and Mitsubishi, for example, they were building Evos and the Imprezas to do rally. So they were building a production car that they were using in rally, and they were racing them. And you know, of course, it's a race car, it's been modified, it's been changed to be more reliable, but the platform still remains, and it still is, you know, what the car that races is based off. Now that engine was used in the V8 supercar when Nissan was entered a few years ago, and they raced the Nissan Altima. So obviously the Nissan V8 teams needed a V8 engine to use from the factory so they could homologate it into the car. So obviously the VK56, being one of the more modern V8s that Nissan was producing, they chose that. Now obviously it was heavily modified to be a race engine and produce the power that they needed to for the race and also be reliable for the race. But you need to remember, those race engines get absolutely abused. You know, them big intakes on the front of the car, they're sucking in a heap of dirt and debris and crap off the road, and that's getting sucked down into the engine. Obviously it does have a filter in there, although it's not like your typical filter that you'll see on the road. It's a very unrestricted filter that is meant to capture particles that are larger than what you would typically see in your road car. So on your road car, obviously, you know, you're not rebuilding an engine every 10,000 Ks or every race. So, you know, they put very small micron filters in the car to capture those tiny little particles of dirt. Whereas on a race car, it's getting rebuilt that race or, you know, the next race. And they can get away with, you know, maybe getting a little bit of crap into the engine. Now, those engines performed very well in the race car. And obviously, like I said, they get punished. They're up to 7,500 RPM on gear changes, on long straights. They're getting pushed to their limits. They're getting absolutely smashed with heat. You know, they're racing for 6-8 hours in a day. You know, they're doing practice sessions, qualifying, top 10 shootouts, and then they go into the race. And obviously they have multiple engines, but still away that engine was used in V8 supercars, which means that, you know, these teams can use these engines and they can be reliable. Well, why should a unstressed engine in your road car not be reliable? And that is the case. So unfortunately the Series 1 and 2 had some issues with timing chains. That's pretty typical on timing chain V8s. They will stretch over time, and obviously, you know, when they fail, it causes big issues with the engine. It can be catastrophic. Now, that's not just a Nissan thing. That goes for Ford, Holden, Chevy, all them sort of engine manufacturers that use a timing chain. Even Toyota, they stretch. Well, they will fail. Now, from Series 2 onwards, they did rectify that, and I haven't heard of any issues with timing chains on the later engines, so that's always a positive. Now, people are getting good kilometres out of these, up to, you know, 300,000+ kilometres. I think most I've seen is up around the 400,000 mark. In the UAE, their patrols get driven a lot more crazy than what ours do. Their engines are lasting even longer than that. Apparently there's patrols that are selling with like 600,000 Ks on the engine, and yeah, they have no dramas at all. So that's very promising when it comes to engine reliability. Now, like I did mention before, you know, sensors and circuitry and wires and stuff, they can fail. For example, my car's done 17,000 Ks and I've already got a check engine light on, which is due to the O2 sensor and the temperature sensor in the bank 1. Does this stop the car from driving? No, it doesn't. Has my fuel economy gotten worse? Yeah, a little bit. Obviously it's not sending the right signal back to the ECU to tell it what the exhaust and the cat is doing. So it's sort of compensating for that for what it doesn't really know. So it's in a different state than what it really should be. But The car drives fine, I've got the same power, there is no strange sounds, so it's not a big deal. So I'll move on to the transmission. The transmissions in these aren't too bad. I've heard a few things go wrong with the transmissions, you know, sometimes reverse not engaging. That is a bit of a bummer, but again, you know, I haven't heard too many stories about it. There has been a handful, I'm sure there is more out there, although yeah, again, it is a bit of a shame. Now, diffs in these, not too bad, pretty good. If you're not going crazy with them and, you know, not pushing them to their absolute extremes, like tackling really wild obstacles and just pedal to the metal when you're doing it, having some sort of mechanical sympathy, they're fine. It's the same with the CVs as well. You know, you need to be careful. It's not like driving a live axle vehicle. You do need to be careful with them because, again, they are prone to braking. Ruben from BMW, his Y62 is a perfect example of that. Although that car is running big power, and these are the consequences. You do pay to play. So he has broken multiple CVs, but he does tackle crazy challenges and does like to give it a lot of right foot. So that is what happens. Now, like I did mention in a previous video, these cars can be pretty temperamental. They do have their oddities about them. They do have like weird things that they do and fail that just shouldn't. You know, like my aircon line rubbed through on the shock bolt in 10,000 k's of driving. You know, like that was pretty poor to leave the factory like that. That should have been checked and that should not have been like that. But again, I haven't heard of that happen to anybody else, so it may just be that I was the lucky one to get that car that had that not like mounted into its bracket properly. And you know, having O2 sensors fail so quickly, they should last, you know, at least 100,000 k's. That is a bit of a bummer, but you know, whatever, they get replaced, you move on. The viscous fan hubs as well, like carrying on about them just staying on when they shouldn't be, losing power, that sort of thing. Like, yeah, that's not ideal either. Apparently there was a bad batch of them. If you get a different batch from the bad one, obviously they're fine. I sort of feel like people give them a bit of a bad rap because of these small little issues and things that happen. But you need to really look at other car manufacturers and see that these little issues and things that happen, they happen to every car. I think it's been more so documented and more prevalent now because the Patrol has gotten so much more popular. Like back when this car first came out, like they were selling thousands. Now they're selling tens of thousands. You know, Nissan has had an excellent year this year for Patrols, and apparently they've put the price of the TIL up about $9,000. I think that sort of really bodes to the more budget-friendly option, which is just the same car without a few little bits and pieces. Nissan has done really well with selling the Patrol now. It's gotten very popular. I think the facelift has helped a lot. The earlier Patrols, in my opinion, didn't look as good. They were sort of GU-ish in their more rounded body style, whereas these are more of their own Y62 sort of look, which is quite good, and I think they look really awesome. You know, if you're looking at 300 series, for example, you know, they're having issues as well, and with a brand new car, you do expect to have issues. Like, nothing is perfect, and you need to understand there is so much electronics and stuff in that car. Let's move into maintenance. What's maintenance like on a Y62? Well, you know, it's your typical stuff, your filters and your oils, you know, typical four-wheel drive stuff. If you're taking your four-wheel drive through water, doing hard crossings, towing, that sort of thing, you're obviously going to have a different maintenance schedule to somebody who's just driving the car around on the road. Obviously that's a case-by-case thing, and if you are doing that sort of thing, well then yeah, you're going to be up for more maintenance. But it's no different to any other four-wheel drive. The parts are pretty good for the Patrol. There's a heap of stuff nowadays that you can order for them, replacement parts, upgrades. A lot more manufacturers are coming into the market for the Y62 and developing parts and things for them, which is great to see. You know, obviously older generations of Patrol have been around for a lot longer, probably a little bit easier to develop parts for, because they're a bit simpler. So that helps to bring costs down as well, because things for the Patrol is just crazy expensive. But you know, once more competitors and prices of material come down a bit, then you know, you'll see the price fall as well. Now there's a few more sort of like little specialty items and things for the Patrol. Obviously with a GU, for example, there's no CVs that you're going to snap. You know, you're not going to have to bring a second set if you're going to do something really hard. You know, live axles are probably typically more stronger than CVs, so they handle that load a lot better. But you know, there's pros and cons to both. If you're in the middle of nowhere and you need parts, well, you know, that's going to be a bit of an issue. A lot of, you know, remote places aren't going to stock parts for a Y62, because what's the point of them doing that? You know, they're not having Y62s come in every single day needing parts, so they're not going to really stock anything. And freight times and stuff have sort of slowed down a little bit, so it's going to take longer for parts to get from a major city to where you are. So if you are travelling remote, I would certainly recommend that you bring parts that you may need, and you know, if you think you need something, bring it, and perhaps bring, you know, extra and things that are a little bit more obtuse that you probably may not think that you need, because you just never know when something's going to happen. And like I've just mentioned, it's going to take a long time for those parts to get going again. That's sort of where having an older four-wheel drive is going to come into its own, because those parts are more readily available and there's a lot more wrecks and stuff that people can pull parts from. Whereas Patrols don't really have many wrecked examples. A lot of them are just driving still. You know, they haven't really reached that age where people have either binned them, or you know, they've broken down beyond repair and they've just been used as a parts car. So that's definitely a positive for the older four-wheel drives. But in saying that, you know, they are pretty good, pretty reliable. Yeah, things do go wrong, but if you bring the spares, well, you can save yourself the hassle and get yourself going again. So probably a little bit more planning and maintenance wise for a trip or something like that to a remote location, because you never know when something's going to go wrong. Definitely being self-sufficient and being able to get yourself out of trouble is a big point. So I think that's something that people need to sort of wrap their heads around. Yeah, cool, they do have issues, but there's more of them getting bought now. Perhaps production is getting rushed a little bit. People aren't really taking their time as much, because it's sort of funny that I haven't really seen too many issues with the earlier series, but it seems to be Series 4, Series 5 that are sort of having the more dramas. And I just wonder if that's because production's getting rushed and people aren't taking their time to do things as good as they should. So there's those couple of things that I think is sort of contributing to the fact that you know, we're seeing a few more issues arise here and there. But you know, don't let that put you off. Like, the car's still under warranty. If you modify it and your mods haven't contributed to the issue, it's going to be fixed for free. Yeah, Nissan can be a bit of a pain in the ass to deal with at times, and they don't do things as quickly as you'd like, but what gets done as quickly as you like nowadays? The post takes weeks to send anything. Manufacturers have got massive lead times. You know, prices of material have gone up. You know, they're a Japanese company. They have to freight things from Japan on a boat to Australia. You know, that can take weeks. There needs to be ship available. There needs to be, you know, stock of that part available. You know, so yeah, things do take time, but patience is key. And yeah, I get it's frustrating, but you can't let them sort of things deter you from buying Patrol, especially at the cost. The value of what you get in the car, it's second to none. Like, you compare this even with the increased price on the TIL, if that's a real thing. You know, if you compare that to the price of a new Land Cruiser and just how poxy they are, then I mean, Patrol wins hands down. Now, it'd be interesting to see how the Warrior compares to the you know, the Series 5, and how that's going to be modelled. If it's going to be more four-wheel drive focused, which I think it is going to be, what that engine's going to be in there as well. I would like to see that V8 in there again. If it's not, well, that's gonna sort of suck. That'd be the only reason that I would sell that, is to buy a Warrior, assuming, you know, that it looks good and it's actually an upgrade from that. But if it is going to be Nissan's new V6, well, you know, that is a bit of a shame. Like always, you know, they're going to put a turbo or two on it, and it's going to make more power and torque than the V8 anyway, so it really comes down to what you want, doesn't it? So just to wrap up, yeah, this Patrol, the Y62, they are different than their predecessors in a lot of different ways. They need to be treated differently as well. They still do deserve the Patrol name tag, and they're definitely more than capable out on the tracks. So guys, that's going to wrap up today's video. I hope you have enjoyed. Get used to this kind of thing, because it's going to be every week I'm going to put out one of these, but I need your help, your comments, your feedback, so then I can tailor this to you, the viewer, because that's why I'm here. Tell me what you want to know, I'll do the research, and I'll make sure that you guys are getting the right knowledge, because that's what it's all about. So that's going to wrap up for today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed. I look forward to next week. Make sure you get them questions in. I'm going to do a bit more research on a few other little topics and stuff that we'll cover next week on Patrol Talk. Thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure you comment, subscribe. If you like this sort of thing, let me know. Make sure you hit that bell icon, because you don't want to miss any more of this information. So until next time, guys, catch you in the next video. All the dirt and stuff as best you can, and I've not seen any dramas, and I don't believe that this O2 sensor stuff has anything to do with forward driving. It literally came on one afternoon when I finished work, literally started the car and it was on. So I don't believe it's anything to do with that. It is known that they do fail regardless of what the life of the vehicle is. So it's just one of them things. So I'd definitely say that, you know, if you were looking to buy a Patrol and wanted to take a bush, yeah, absolutely, this thing is going to get you home, no doubt about it. But I think the difference is with an old beater like a GU, GQ, you know, you can push that thing really hard. These fucking cars. Fuck off. Like, you can push that car really hard and, you know, it's not going to have any issues or anything. You know, you can push them cars quite hard, and, you know, if you be smart about it, nothing's going to happen. Like, for example, I took my my old GQ Patrol through some places that were, you know, pretty sketchy in the big high country, and it had literally zero issues, and I walked into that trip having issues already, and it come out no different to how it was. So you know, they're definitely just like that bulldog tenacity that they're just always going to keep going. And that is the same with these, but it's just using them in a different way. You know, just be smart about where you're taking it, your line choices, how you're using it, how much you're giving the right pedal, you know, like how much you're feeding that right pedal, you know, like you just got to be smart about it. Have mechanical sympathy and, you know, just have a think about the vehicle when you're trying to tackle something. You know, if something's a bit too hard and you're starting to push the vehicle a bit, just put a winch on, you know. Like, there's nothing worse than ruining a good trip because you've broken a car and you can't keep going. You know, don't be that bloke that just ruins it because you want to get through without using a winch because it's such a bad thing. You put them on there so you can get through tough obstacles, you know, like, just be smart about it. Now, ease of repair, you know, is a Patrol easy to work on? Well, yes and no. You know, with your major stuff, like suspension and stuff, even like on the older Patrols, you know, that's stuff you can do at home, and, you know, if you have the equipment to do it at home, you can still do it on a Y62 as well. You know, obviously you need to do the research into what you're doing, because you may need to have the suspension degassed, regassed, depending on what you're doing, as in the HPMC. So that's where the sort of specialty tools come into it. So it can be a little bit more tricky, and not such like a weekend job. So it's definitely a lot more simpler on the older vehicles compared to the Y62. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But, you know, a majority of things are fairly easy, and, you know, you chuck a snorkel on, you can chuck a bull bar on, you can chuck a rear bar on. You know, you can fit up your UHF, you can chuck a winch on, you can do all that sort of stuff at home. Like, you don't need specialty stuff to really do it. But, you know, the bigger things like the suspension and stuff, if it does need to be regassed, it's, you know, better to take it to somebody who has them tools and has the knowledge of doing it. Because, like I had mentioned, they can be a bit temperamental, which sort of is a bit of a shame. But, you know, it's definitely not out of the realms of possibility to do this sort of stuff at home. It's a little bit more of a challenge. So does the Y62 live up to its name of Patrol? It's a bit of a tough one. I think it does, but I also think that the market has changed for who's buying four-wheel drives. You know, back in the early days, vehicles were quite simple, and there wasn't a lot to go wrong because people still don't want, you know, to have to be working on a car, but they're a lot more simpler, and there wasn't as much to go wrong as what there is in these. You know, everything has so many electronics and stuff in it for emissions and for creature comforts inside the vehicle, you know, like, it's not so much the fault of the manufacturer, it's more so the fault of the governing bodies who regulate car manufacturing. You know, the amount of restriction that's on an engine like this so it can comply with emissions, like 2 sets of cats for both banks. Like, that is so much restriction on an engine with its breathing. Like, that's just ridiculous. To keep down emissions and, you know, all the you know, like emission stuff that controls that does the engine, and, like, you know, all that sort of stuff that tries to make the engine as efficient as possible, runs on very fine tolerances, and, you know, one little thing could upset it and could just, you know, ruin a trip quite easily. So yeah, the Patrol still does live up to its name. It is definitely a very capable car at everything that it does. I just think the way that we use them needs to be changed a little bit. But I mean, like, still get out there and have fun with your car. You shouldn't have to worry about, geez, am I gonna, break the car on this trip? But be smart, That's what it comes down to, just being smart. But again, I'll go back to Ruben and the way that he treats his Patrol. He gets out there and he has great fun. And tackle some challenging stuff, and that car is just unbelievable with what it does. Really blows me away just how capable that they really are. Like, doesn't struggle where vehicles do, and it's just, yeah, I think it really is a testament that Nissan, despite all the external factors of how they must build a vehicle, and they can still create a Land Cruiser crushing vehicle like the Y62. Now, I think a lot of people get turned off from the Y62 just for the simple fact that they have so many electronics and there's so many problems, because every day I see somebody commenting, multiple people commenting, I've got this issue, what is it? And I think for a new buyer that's very discouraging, but you got to understand there's more Patrols being bought now, so there's going to be more issues come up. Vehicles are always going to have dramas like this for the early stage of their life until they get everything sorted, and then they're good to go after that. Every car's the same, every car is like this. They're going to have little dramas here and there, and like my wife's CX-5, it's nearly got 80,000 Ks on it now, 2018. It's had one issue with the screen playing up, and apart from that, nothing. Every car has little issues here and there, regardless of whether or not they're severe or they're just minor. Like, yeah, cool, this has had a couple of dramas and it's not even done 20,000 Ks yet, but once that gets all ironed out, I would expect that it's going to continue to go for another